Hello everyone, it's Iron Road and welcome back to the channel. Today I wish to talk briefly about a rather scary ballot initiative in Oregon coming this November that aims to restrict Oregonians of their Second Amendment rights. So let's see what it's all about. So the pro-2A fighters a few months back were giving it their all to prevent a ballot measure called, at the time, IP-17 from getting on Oregon's November 2022 ballot. In order to get on the ballot, IP-17 needed a certain amount of signatures from Oregon residents before July of this year, and unfortunately it met the requirement for the signature threshold and was certified by Oregon Secretary of State and assigned ballot measure 114. Now, what does ballot measure 114 do? According to my notes, and I've briefly read the bill, so don't really take too much what I say to heart, take it with a little bit of grain of salt. I referenced Ballotpedia, where the ballot measure is being publicly posted for your own PDF download consumption. In my brief read of the measure, it requires permits to be issued by local law enforcement to buy a firearm. It will require the presentation of photo ID, fingerprints, safety training course, a criminal background check, and a fee payment to apply for a permit. And it would also prohibit the manufacturing, importing, purchasing, selling, possession, and use or transfer of magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds. In the measure, it would create the use, measure, and all that other jazz regarding high capacity magazines, 10 rounds or more, a Class A misdemeanor. In the measure regarding magazines, there are exceptions for high capacity magazines for the armed forces and law enforcement, but also those owned prior to the ban and inherited after. There is some stuff, some language in the bill that says something about stamping the date of manufacture. I don't know if private citizens would have to etch or stamp their magazines. Also, in regards to that, it also does give exemptions for firearms that have a tubular magazine like your lever actions and your pump action shotguns, and some other exemptions to that. Let's see, according to my notes, it also seems to give exemptions at sponsored events like competitions and exhibitions while traveling through the state, and events aimed at firearms education. Sponsored events, however, it does fail to mention one concerning thing. It fails to mention if pre-owned magazines could be used and possessed by residents with or without the permit to buy, and whether if they have their concealed carry permit or not, whether if they could take those high capacity magazines and carry them publicly outside the home. I didn't see anything regarding that, and as far as I've read, if I had to guess, law-abiding Oregonians would unfortunately have to leave their grandfathered high-capacity detachable magazines at home and use ones with 10 rounds or less while out in public. I'm not an attorney. You may want to reference yours if you got one that's on retainer, or get some advice from a local one. What else? What's the process like? The permit, this is where it gets really deeply concerning. A permit to buy in Oregon would be akin to what a FOID card is in a state like Illinois, but makes no mention of ammunition. In order to get this permit, a resident would have to be subjected to presenting a photo ID, as I've already stated, fingerprints, undergo a safety training course that's sponsored by the local law enforcement or the state, I think. Criminal background check naturally, and a fee payment of $65, and a renewal fee of $50. Um, Upon renewal, you would not have to redo the safety course according to Ballotpedia. The local law enforcement department will have 30 days of processing your application upon receiving to verify that you, the applicant, meet the qualifications to be issued a permit. The Oregon State Police will have the ability to deny any applicant that they believe is a danger to themselves or others, or otherwise a prohibited person, and are required to submit reports detailing denied applicants to the federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, district attorneys with the jurisdiction over the location of where the application was filed, and to the psychiatric review board, or if the applicant is under its jurisdiction. The Oregon Department of Justice will be required to publish annual reports in January of each year starting in 2024, detailing the numbers of applicants submitted, permits issued, and permits denied, along with the reasoning for the denial. What is the appeal process like if you're denied? In the event of a denial, the denying agent will be required to detail the reason for the denial in writing and have it sent to the applicant by mail. A permit to purchase could be revoked if the holder is arrested, cited for a crime that would otherwise disqualify the person from being issued a permit. An applicant who has been denied, or a holder who has been denied their permit revoked, would be able to petition their county circuit court to review the denial, non-renewal, and revocation within 30 days of receiving the notice. Petitions will be required to be heard and ruled on within 15 judicial days, which, if you think, basically just like how our federal and our state governments work, federal holidays, they don't work on those, so basically 5 days out of the week. And to be honest, those type of judicial days, it sounds like a long time. To be honest, if I had to pick my time with UPS business days versus judicial days, I would I would like to have UPS days opposed to judicial days. In summary, what do I think? The measure, in my opinion, is patently unconstitutional and stands on very weak grounds, or very weak grounded arguments, especially with the recent Supreme Court case, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin decision. It would be hard for the measure to pass constitutional muster, despite the fact that this measure is originated from voters and not the legislator. And I remember hearing a long time ago that when it comes to laws that were put in place by the voters versus the legislators, ones that have been put in place by the electorate is a lot harder to overturn than something that has been passed by the state. But don't necessarily quote me on that. I'm just a guy on YouTube that's just babbling off nonsense for anyone else could know. And we do have a number of other federal cases like the Miller v. Bonta case, which is the magazine case that was recently GVR'd, which is granted review, vacated, and remanded back down to the Ninth Circuit, who then recently played the delay game of sending it back down to federal judge Robert T. Benitez, who started Freedom Week and ruled in favor of the 2A plaintiffs previously. And as I understand from people like the Armed Scholar and the Legally Armed Attorneys, I think that's on YouTube as well, Roger T. Benitez, St. Benitez, he is playing no games and has demanded preliminary hearings, if I don't recall, by December, I think, from what what I can remember. So, in closing, ballot measure 114, no go. It is a litany of anti-gun or anti-two-way wet dream wish list, and it really wouldn't do much at all in quelling the rise in gun violence, in which, oddly enough, the the rationale from the state legislator and proponents, or not proponents, but supporters of this ballot measure, cite the gun violence, the rise and increase in the state naturally, but they also concerningly cite the rise in gun purchases. And in my opinion, gun purchases are kind of irrelevant to whether if crime is on the rise or not. Because if you're telling me that because the rise in gun purchases is probably tied to gun crime, well, hang on a second. Where'd you get those numbers of reported gun sales? That means people had to gone through an ATF Form 4473, aka a federal background check that's either mandated, as I remember, from the National Firearms Act or the Gun Control Act, also known as the GCA. So you're kind of, being a bit double-speaky there, in my opinion. In closing, that's all I got for you guys. Hope to see you soon on the channel. I got some videos that I've been planning to make. The M&P 2.0 metal is out. I've been wanting to record some videos with that, and of me sighting in, not necessarily sighting in, but shooting my CMP M1 Garand that I got from the Civilian Marksmanship Program. It is a beautiful rifle, and I highly recommend every red, white, and blue blood American go out and get one. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.